Behind the spotlights of Hollywood's golden age lurked a darker reality. Studios controlled every aspect of stars' lives, forcing gay celebrities into fake heterosexual marriages to preserve their marketable image. These weren't love stories, but carefully orchestrated illusions that sacrificed authentic lives for box office success. Who were they behind the perfect masks? Rock Hudson and Phyllis Gates. Rock Hudson was Universal Studios' golden boy, the very image of American masculinity, with his towering height, broad shoulders, and velvet voice. Millions of women fantasized about him. But in fall 1954, his entire career nearly imploded when Confidential magazine prepared to expose his secret gay relationships. The studio machine moved with terrifying efficiency. Within 24 hours, Henry Wilson, Hudson's powerful agent, arranged a marriage to Phyllis Gates, his own secretary. Wilson selected Gates because she was smart, discreet, and untainted by scandal. When asked to become a contract wife, Gates reportedly said, "If all it takes is a marriage certificate to give him some peace, then I'll sign." 2 days later, they wed in Santa Barbara. No announcement, no celebrity guests, just a single Universal photographer taking precisely 5 pictures. The true director was Henry Wilson, who sat in the back of the church, watching his wristwatch. The entire ceremony lasted just 12 minutes. Meanwhile, Confidential received an anonymous warning that if they targeted Hudson, Universal would reopen sealed files about their editor's tax evasion. The exposé vanished immediately. The marriage crumbled quickly. Within 6 months, Gates lived alone in a Westwood apartment. By 1958, she filed for divorce, citing mental cruelty. Hudson moved to a new house. Gates disappeared from showbiz, and the charade ended in silence. When Hudson appeared gaunt and frail in 1985, dying from AIDS, the world realized he had lived under a cloud of fear. For 3 decades, years of false living and false love, just to preserve a career that America wasn't ready to accept. Cary Grant and Randolph Scott. On screen, Cary Grant was sophistication personified, charming, elegant, and seemingly effortless in his perfection. Behind closed doors, he maintained Hollywood's most fascinating roommate arrangement. For nearly 12 years, Grant lived with fellow actor Randolph Scott in a Santa Monica beach house, creating what insiders called the most talked-about bachelor living situation in town. Most shocking was how openly they lived together. In 1934, Modern Screen magazine ran a photo series titled Hollywood's Most Unusual Roommates, featuring the 2 men hanging laundry, cooking together, and reading Sunday papers side by side in matching armchairs. A 1935 photoplay article quipped, "If you want to learn how to maintain a marriage, ask Cary Grant and Randolph Scott. The only thing is, they're not married." The studio's approach was fascinatingly contradictory. Rather than hiding it, they initially embraced it as charming bachelor behavior, evidence of Grant's carefree lifestyle, before inevitably settling down with the right woman. Grant's numerous marriages, 5 in total, created a dangerous public narrative that deflected attention. When pressures mounted in 1940, he married wealthy heiress Barbara Hutton, just as his star was rising to unprecedented heights. The marriage lasted just 3 years. Even after his split from Scott, Grant reportedly maintained financial support for his former roommate for years. In a personal diary leaked decades later, Grant's 3rd wife, Betsy Drake, bitterly wrote, "I didn't marry a man. I married a shadow, and that shadow belonged to someone else." Grant never publicly acknowledged the true nature of his relationship with Scott. In his final interview before retiring, when asked if there was anything in life where he felt never truly himself, Grant simply smiled, looked at the camera, and said nothing. Judy Garland and Vincente Minnelli. In summer 1945, MGM orchestrated one of Hollywood's most cleverly staged marriages when director Vincente Minnelli adjusted Judy Garland's bow tie on the set of Meet Me in Street. The gesture was seized upon by the press as the beginning of a fairy tale romance. It was a desperate move to silence dangerous rumors. Behind the scenes, insiders had whispered for years. According to screenwriter Charles Walters, Minnelli was once spotted at a private Malibu party wearing a red velvet dress, fully made up, and using the alias Vivian. Though photos were destroyed, the incident was recorded in MGM's secret personnel files kept by studio boss Louis B. Mayer. When Photoplay threatened to publish the story in early 1944, Mayer summoned both Garland and Minnelli to his office with a blunt ultimatum. If you two get married by June, I'll erase everything from the file. If not, neither of you will have a place here. The wedding took place at Mayer's Brentwood home. No reporters, no celebrity guests, just a few agents and managers in a ceremony that lasted exactly 9 minutes. That evening, the couple was placed in a corner suite at Chateau Marmont, but according to the hotel manager, Garland slept alone. Minnelli returned to the studio for urgent business. The marriage lasted nearly 6 years and produced daughter Liza Minnelli. Garland discovered her husband was seeing a French costume designer in West Hollywood. After catching Minnelli leaving the Bel Air Hotel with him at 3 a.m., she screamed at her manager, "I can't keep living like a mask anymore," and filed for divorce. Garland later coined the phrase lavender trap for the fake marriages designed to protect Hollywood images while destroying real lives. Barbara Stanwyck and Robert Taylor. On May 14, 1939, MGM orchestrated a wedding that made headlines across America. Barbara Stanwyck, one of the most bankable actresses of the decade, married matinee idol Robert Taylor in a small ceremony in San Diego. Studio boss Louis B. Mayer adored the pairing, selling them as Hollywood's dream couple to gossip columnists nationwide. But the deeper people looked, the stranger details emerged. Why did Stanwyck, 4 years older than Taylor, dodge every question about marriage throughout their 3-year relationship? Why was the wedding quietly held with only a few close friends? But what continues to stir whispers decades later is one striking detail. There was no kiss during the ceremony, no cake cutting, no dancing, no traditional romance. The honeymoon night took place at Taylor's mother's house, where he had lived during his youth. Barbara sat reading a book, while Robert locked himself in the bathroom and didn't emerge until morning. A hotel staff member later recalled, "I've never seen anyone go on a honeymoon and bring nothing but film scripts." Stanwyck had long been the subject of whispers about her close relationships with women. Taylor, meanwhile, was MGM's golden boy, whose extraordinarily good looks made him the studio's most marketable romantic lead. Their marriage served multiple purposes: silencing rumors about both stars, creating publicity gold for MGM, and satisfying moral clauses in both contracts requiring respectable public images. In 1954, Confidential magazine boldly claimed Taylor was a regular at exclusive Beverly Hills parties, where all guests were stars who couldn't live their truth. Stanwyck earned the nickname the Iron Woman, and never Adol mentioned her husband in interviews after 1945. The marriage lasted exactly 12 years. No children, no scandals, and not a single photograph showing them holding hands outside a film set. Rudolph, Valentino, and Jean Acker. In 1919, when silent film icon Rudolph Valentino married actress Jean Acker, Hollywood believed a new power couple had formed. They created one of the most bizarre marital disasters in entertainment history. Their union lasted mere hours. On their wedding night, Acker suddenly locked Valentino out of their hotel suite, forcing America's greatest lover to spend his first married night wandering Hollywood streets alone. Widely rumored to prefer women, immediately regretted the marriage. Hollywood insiders claimed she accepted Valentino's proposal on impulse, then panicked when faced with consummating a marriage she never truly wanted. Gossip columns pounced, branding it a loveless union orchestrated for publicity. The annulment came quickly, but not before Valentino suffered humiliating headlines, questioning his masculinity and appeal. Ironically, Acker later admitted she regretted humiliating him publicly, saying, He didn't deserve such treatment, regardless of why we married. This disastrous arrangement damaged Valentino's carefully constructed image as the screen's ultimate Latin lover. Studio executives grew concerned when audiences questioned whether the man who made women faint in theaters couldn't even get his own wife to let him through the bedroom door. The marriage revealed how early Hollywood pressured stars into relationships that served career advancement rather than personal happiness. Valentino, born in Italy, where his mannerisms were considered typically masculine, faced constant criticism in America for being too feminine, making a conventional marriage seem necessary for his career survival. Calamitous marriage became one of Hollywood's earliest cautionary tales of image management gone wrong, a reminder that even the screen's greatest lover couldn't escape the industry's demands for conformity in an era where authenticity meant career suicide. Cole Porter and Linda Lee. Broadway's brilliant composer of over 800 timeless songs, including Night and Day and I've Got You Under My Skin, lived a double life that few understood. In December 1919, at the Ritz Hotel in Paris, he met wealthy socialite Linda Lee Thomas, 8 years his senior. Just 2 weeks later, they married at the American Church in Paris. No media, no orchestra, just a quiet ceremony that journalist Theodore White later described as pact between two souls who understood each other in a world that didn't allow them to be themselves. Linda had inherited millions after divorcing her abusive first husband, while Porter, openly gay within elite circles, found in her a perfect shield from Broadway gossip. Their marriage wasn't about passion but protection, a partnership between two worldly sophisticates who created a glamorous facade while allowing each other freedom behind closed doors. For 34 years, they entertained at their Venetian palace and Manhattan townhouse, hosting royalty and celebrities in legendary parties where Cole's brilliance shone. Even after Porter's crippling 1937 horse-riding accident that left his legs nearly paralyzed, Linda remained his devoted companion and protector. A document discovered in Yale's archives in 2004 revealed a letter Porter had written to Linda, "I love you the way a man loves freedom. You are my freedom." It was perhaps the most honest description of their unconventional bond. When Linda died from cancer in 1954, Cole didn't attend her funeral. He shut his doors and saw no one for 3 weeks. 1 year later, he never wrote another song again. Friends said the light went out of his eyes without Linda's protective presence, proving their marriage, though not conventional, contained a love deeper than many traditional unions. Porter once said, "I married the kindest woman I've ever known. She never asked questions I couldn't answer." Tyrone Power and Annabella, 20th Century Fox's undisputed king of the box office, made women swoon and men envious with his impossibly perfect face and charismatic presence. In 1939, he married French actress Annabella, already a star in Europe, in a wedding hailed as a glamorous international union perfect for Fox's publicity machine. Behind this picture-perfect marriage lurked Hollywood's familiar pattern of image management. Power, whose sculpted features graced magazine covers worldwide, faced persistent rumors about his private life. Studio chief Darryl F. Zanuck reportedly arranged the marriage to squash gossip that threatened Power's marketability as a romantic lead. Annabella later admitted their union was difficult from the start. Power's frequent absences, serving as a Marine pilot in World War II and touring with stage plays, strained what little genuine connection they had. Unable to have more children, Annabella devoted herself to her daughter from a previous marriage, whom Power adopted. A former Fox publicist later revealed that Power maintained relationships with several men throughout the marriage, including a long-term affair with a stuntman who worked on 3 of his films. The studio paid substantial hush money to keep these stories from the press, who eagerly promoted Power as the ideal American husband. By 1948, they divorced, with Annabella later revealing he pursued countless affairs. "Our marriage was lovely on camera," she told a friend years later, "but the cameras were never in our bedroom, where the truth lived." The real tragedy wasn't the marriage itself, but how it forced Power to compartmentalize his life. In public, he played the devoted husband. In private, he sought authentic connections while living in fear of exposure. When Power died suddenly of a heart attack at 44, friends whispered that stress from living a divided life contributed to his early death. Katharine Hepburn and Ludlow Ogden Smith. At just 21 years old, fresh out of Bryn Mawr College, Katharine Hepburn shocked her progressive family by marrying socialite Ludlow Ogden Smith in 1928. Smith adored her so completely, he legally changed his name to S. Ogden Ludlow, so Hepburn wouldn't have to be Mrs. Smith, a name she considered too common for a rising star. The marriage provided Hepburn with financial stability just as Hollywood was instituting morality clauses in contracts. Yet Hepburn quickly tired of marriage, finding it stifling to her fierce independence and ambition. By 1934, she divorced him in Mexico, later admitting in her autobiography, "I was a terrible pig. I used his devotion and I gave almost nothing in return." Throughout her legendary career, Hepburn was linked to women like Laura Harding and sports champion Babe Didrikson Zaharias. While her 26-year relationship with Spencer Tracy dominated public narratives, biographers note her closest confidantes were almost exclusively women. Her Connecticut estate became known in certain circles as a safe haven for women who loved women, though this aspect of her life remained carefully guarded. Hepburn never remarried, famously telling Barbara Walters, "I didn't want to give up my career, and you can't be married and be independent." She maintained lifelong friendship with Ludlow, who never spoke ill of her despite the brief marriage. Anthony Perkins and Barry Berenson. Anthony Perkins created cinema's most unforgettable villain as Norman Bates in Hitchcock's Psycho, a role that made him a star while simultaneously typecasting him in roles that emphasized psychological fragility and darkness, an ironic parallel to his own complex relationship with Hollywood. Behind the scenes, Perkins reportedly maintained a relationship with one of America's ultimate symbols of masculinity, Rock Hudson. According to several biographers, they met at a private party in Malibu, hosted by director George Cukor, long rumored as a safe haven for closeted stars. Over the next few years, they were spotted together multiple times, riding in the same car after screenings, renting a cabin in Big Bear Lake, and sitting side by side at Montgomery Clift's birthday party. At this critical moment, a marriage was arranged to Barry Berenson, talented photographer and granddaughter of legendary designer Elsa Schiaparelli. They married in August 1973, in a private ceremony at a small Cape Cod estate with no media present. What makes this lavender marriage unique was the apparent genuine affection that developed between them. Unlike arrangements made purely for publicity, a close friend of Barry later revealed in an interview, "She knew everything, but Barry always said, 'I love him. No matter who he loves, I still want to be there to protect the rest of his life.'" In 1992, Perkins died of AIDS. Barry stood by him until the end, protecting his privacy even as speculation swirled. In a cruel twist of fate, Barry herself died 9 years later, a passenger on American Airlines Flight 11, which crashed into the North Tower on the 11th of September 2001, Marlene Dietrich and Rudolph Sieber. 1923, 1-year-old Marlene Dietrich married assistant director Rudolph Sieber in a quiet Berlin ceremony. They had one daughter, Maria, in 1924. But this was far from a conventional marriage. It was one of Hollywood's most fascinating open relationships, lasting over 50 years until Sieber's death in 1976. Dietrich, with her androgynous beauty and unapologetic sensuality, challenged conventional notions of femininity from the moment she appeared in The Blue Angel. Her marriage provided the perfect cover for her numerous affairs with both men and women, reportedly including John Wayne, Edith Piaf, and even a young John F. Kennedy. What makes their arrangement particularly fascinating is how openly they acknowledged their unconventional setup within their social circle. Sieber eventually began a relationship with a Russian woman named Tamara Matul, with whom he lived openly on a poultry farm in the San Fernando Valley. Rather than divorcing, Dietrich and Sieber maintained their marriage as a legal fiction, benefiting them both. Dietrich would sometimes bring her lovers to visit Sieber and Matul at their farm, creating a remarkably modern extended family arrangement decades before such relationships became accepted. She financially supported both, visiting often even as her career soared in Hollywood with films like Morocco and Destry Rides Again. The studio system initially tried to present Dietrich as a conventional wife and mother, but her refusal to conform eventually became part of her mystique. Unlike many stars who hid their private lives, Dietrich incorporated elements of her fluid sexuality into her public persona. Appearing in men's suits and kissing women on screen in an era when such behavior was shocking. Dietrich's daughter Maria later wrote, "My mother and father created their own rules for marriage. It wasn't about fidelity, it was about loyalty, which they maintained until death. Their arrangement wasn't a prison, but a shelter where both could live freely, separate but legally united." Charles Laughton and Elsa Lanchester. Charles Laughton, unforgettable as the Hunchback of Notre Dame and Captain Bligh in Mutiny on the Bounty, married British actress Elsa Lanchester in 1929. Their marriage lasted 34 years until his death in 1962, presenting to the world the image of a devoted artistic couple. Behind closed doors, however, lay a completely different story. Elsa later confirmed in her partially coded autobiography what many suspected: Laughton was homosexual, and their marriage was built on mutual understanding rather than romantic love. They created a partnership based on artistic respect and companionship. What makes their arrangement particularly noteworthy was its longevity and apparent success. Laughton and Lanchester remained together for over 3 decades. They appeared in multiple films together, including The Private Life of Henry VIII, Rembrandt, and most famously, Witness for the Prosecution. Laughton, a brilliant but tortured actor, poured his emotions into his performances, while Lanchester shielded his private life from public scrutiny. She famously portrayed the bride in Bride of Frankenstein, developing her own eccentric screen persona that allowed her independence within their unusual marriage. She candidly wrote in her memoir, "We both knew what the marriage was," adding that they maintained separate bedrooms from the beginning. Yet, despite this arrangement, they were described by friends as inseparable companions who genuinely enjoyed each other's company and creative collaboration. After Laughton's death, Lanchester never remarried, suggesting their bond held genuine meaning beyond mere convenience. When asked years later by a journalist about the nature of their marriage isn't just about sharing a bed. Sometimes it's about sharing a life, which is far more complicated and interesting. When Elsa died in 1986, she was buried beside him, united in death as they had been in their unique life together. Raymond Burr and Isabella Ward. Long before he became TV's unshakable Perry Mason and wheelchair-using detective Robert Ironside, Raymond Burr led one of Hollywood's most carefully constructed double lives. In 1948, he married fellow Pasadena Playhouse student Isabella Ward in what would be his only legitimate marriage. What followed was one of Hollywood's most elaborate fictional biographies. Burr claimed he had been married 3 times. His first wife supposedly died in the same plane crash that killed actor Leslie Howard during World War II. His second allegedly died of cancer, and his son reportedly died of leukemia at age 10. None of these tragic events actually occurred. These were fabrications created to explain why Burr, a handsome leading man, lived alone and was never seen dating women. In reality, from 1960 until his death in 1993, Burr lived openly, yet quietly, with his partner Robert Benavides, a relationship spanning over 30 years. They managed a dot vineyard, orchid nurseries, and an island in Fiji, leaving behind an estate worth $32 million. The contrast between Burr's public fiction and private reality became striking after his death, when he left his entire estate to Benavides, completely excluding his remaining family members. His sister Geraldine challenged the will, bringing public attention to the relationship Burr had worked so hard to keep private. What makes Burr's case fascinating is how he supplemented the fictional marriages with equally fictional military heroism, claiming he had been wounded at the Battle of Okinawa. These weren't random lies but carefully constructed stories, painting Burr as a heroic, tragic figure, whose solitary life resulted from noble sacrifice rather than his sexuality. A former CBS executive later revealed, "Everyone knew about Raymond, but no one said a word." His fictional life story was so detailed and delivered with such conviction that challenging it seemed almost cruel. The world remembered him as Perry Mason, but he left everything to the man he was never allowed to acknowledge: Liza Minnelli and Peter Allen. In 1967, when Liza Minnelli was just 21 years old and had already won a Tony Award for Flora the Red Menace, she had also inherited a complicated legacy from her mother, Judy Garland. This legacy included marrying Australian singer-songwriter Peter Allen on March 3, 1967, creating one of Hollywood's most talked-about unions and continuing a family pattern of lavender marriages. Allen had previously opened for Judy Garland in several shows. It was Garland herself who introduced Peter to her daughter after a performance in Miami Beach. They quickly became close, with Liza calling him the only man who made me feel safe in the artistic world. They attended the 1969 Academy Awards hand in hand, looking like a couple about to write their own fairy tale. The wedding was partially sponsored by MGM as a classic PR move for Hollywood's Golden Girl. People magazine dubbed them America's new Broadway couple. But in truth, those closest to them knew it was just a performance. According to memoirs of journalist Cindy Adams, who had previously dated Mark Herron, Judy Garland's ex-husband, another source confirmed it was actually Herron who introduced Allen into the backstage network of elite gay male performers. Liza's story was overwhelmed by a sense of historical repetition. Judy Garland reportedly screamed backstage at one of Liza's shows, "That girl is marrying someone who slept with the man who betrayed her own mother." The marriage between Liza and Peter lasted only 7 years. In 1974, they quietly divorced. Allen never publicly acknowledged his relationships with men during Liza's lifetime, but from 1978 onward, he appeared only with male performance partners and never mentioned his marriage to Liza again. As for Minnelli, she would repeat her mother's pattern of marriages: many weddings, many divorces, and always hurt by men who never truly loved her the way she deserved.